Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, Tarek and I managed to drag myself into my office and studio on the weekend. That is because about 2 hours ago, The Legend of Zelda Dusk, the Twilight Princess PC port bringing over the Twilight Princess decomp to PC, has released as a 1.0 version. And I had maybe 30 or 40 messages on Discord and like 20 different tweets adding me or in my direct messages telling me this thing was out. So, you know, full well, every once in a while, I do wander into my studio on the weekend to talk about some fun stuff. And obviously, because we've been talking about the Twilight Princess decomp and big decomp energy a lot lately, you know full well I was always going to be making this video. And this, honestly, as a first release, is absolutely 10 out of 10 spectacular. Now, of course, no one's gotten a chance to play it from start to finish yet outside of the development team, so we're basically going to be going along for the same ride now that this thing is out. But honestly, it seems like developers are trying to speedrun getting Twilight Princess on PC because we have Dusk now out and Courage Reborn soon on the way. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. But in my obviously brief time playing Twilight Princess Dusk as a PC port, it does absolutely everything you want it to do, nothing more and nothing less. And if you've noticed, this is running at a higher frame rate than the actual Twilight Princess build, even on something like Wii U. It is being done via interpolation. That's because the frame rate in the game is tied to the game logic. So if you do want a higher frame rate, you do have to use interpolation, and there is a warning message that you could get some small visual glitches when you do this. But honestly, in my footage so far, I really haven't seen any of that happening whatsoever. This just looks like an absolutely smooth, absolutely spectacular version of Twilight Princess through and through. Just remember, don't rush like me and absolutely line your jumps up, or else you're going to end up falling in the lava and absolutely screwing yourself over. And that really is a funny thing when you're trying to get footage very quickly. The good thing is, I have an entire folder of saves for Twilight Princess, having tested the Courage Reborn build as well. And as far as when that's coming out, I'm not sure, but I feel like it'll be out shortly. I think the fun thing is going to be you're going to get to play Twilight Princess 2 different ways on your PC from 2 different teams with 2 completely different PC ports. So not 0, not 1, but 2 in 2026, and honestly that's absolutely spectacular. And that's why I really keep talking about this big decomp energy theory outside of the fact that it is a really funny thing to say. Suddenly, retro gaming is just absolutely blowing up with different decomps, recomps, and PC ports, and Twilight Princess probably going to be one of the biggest PC ports of 2026, if not the absolute biggest, because this game is absolutely spectacular and fun, and now on PC it is so much better. And if you haven't noticed already, I'll show you in a bit. I am changing up the color settings on this because it has the original mode as well as Dusk mode, which is going to play around with the bloom, change up the color saturation, and kind of give you a little bit more modern looking Zelda. But the nice thing is, in this PC port, absolutely every single option is available to you, and I will go over some of the best ones that you don't want to miss, so you can kind of articulate the exact Twilight Princess experience you want. And as far as the development process is concerned, I absolutely love when developers give you that freedom to kind of make the game whatever you want, because that really is the #1 reason why PC ports exist outside of better graphics, higher internal rendering resolution, and just overall modability, giving you control to play around with the settings and decide what the best version of Twilight Princess you can make possibly is. And yes, I died there intentionally just to see how the loading and saving went. But as we get to a large outdoor area here, I am doing this at 8x resolution, and I will show you how to change the resolution after the first soundtrack sample. You can absolutely dial this thing up to feel even higher than 4K, and it looks stunning. I captured this on my PC with the HDMI cable going over to my LG C4 OLED, just so I could get a look at it there as well, because I do like to split my monitors out, and it looks stunning. All of the dark visuals, all of the bright colors on an OLED are just 10 out of 10 good. And honestly, in my brief time with this one again, I really can't point to anything that doesn't really 100% hit for me, outside of the fact that I use ultra-wide monitors, so by default it launches to 4:3, and you actually have to kind of constrain it to 16:9 yourself. Luckily, I am a filmmaker, so I got really close to it, but if I just hit the maximize button, it goes to the ultra-wide aspect ratio as you saw in the intro, which is not a problem for capture. I definitely constrain this myself, so it's the one thing I might change. Let's go into the first soundtrack sample so you can hear the music, and I'll be right back with a lot more Twilight Princess Dusk. So from the sound effects to the music to the enemy noises and everything else in between, it sounds exactly like Twilight Princess should. Now you can bring the menu up in-game, and you're going to see here, I'm going to play around with the bloom from classic to dusk, and you can kind of see the overall draw distance or clarity in the distance is going to increase when you're in dusk. And you can also play around with the bloom brightness. I actually took it all the way down to 0% for this one clip. And that again really does give you the ultimate control to play around with exactly what you want this game to look like. And I think that is going to be one of people's favorite things about this. If you haven't noticed already, I'm also playing on mirrored mode like you were playing on the Wii, even though this is based upon the GameCube decompilation, and this is GameCube code being ported over to PC, not the Wii version. If you don't want mirror mode, you can turn it on and off at will. I just figured I would switch it up to explain to you that that does work. Additionally, if you want to use gyro aiming for some of the other implementations here, you can 100% do that. It really does give you the control, pun very much intended, to kind of play this game however you want. And that's going to be a very big deal for a lot of people, and you can't basically diminish how much work something like this absolutely takes. Between this and Courage Reborn, there's probably hundreds upon hundreds, maybe even getting close to 1,000 hours into getting these things over to PC. And as we're in the town square with Hyrule Castle in the background, if we pop back into that menu and play around with it a little bit more, in this water fountain, it's going to be a very good example of how the colors actually change around. Take a look at that blue in the background on the actual fountain. When we go and play around with the internal rendering resolution, you can see it get darker, you can see it get lighter, and of course clearer, and you can just dial this up. We'll go to 7x, 6x, all the way up to whatever you want. But if we go over to bloom, from dusk to actual original, the color in the fountain absolutely changes, as does the bloom on something like the water cascading down. So that, I think, is maybe my favorite new feature, because the bloom in Twilight Princess definitely a little bit too heavy to my liking, and I think a lot of people would probably agree in the same way. As I kind of navigate around here with all the rain and the fog, these graphics coming over to a modern system, I'm on a 3080 Ti and an i9-12900K, running this at 8x resolution with no issues. This looks better than any time that Twilight Princess has ever been shown before, in my opinion. But do leave me a comment down below and you tell me so far, how do you like the overall visual presentation of the game? But we're going to do another soundtrack sample and a little bit of story here so you can see the intro to Twilight Princess on PC. And I'll be right back with more. I mean, honestly, the game sounds incredible, it looks incredible, and with that rainbow in the background, it is just 10 out of 10, looking better than any other version of Twilight Princess I've ever played, and that really is a fun takeaway. And as we go through the cutscene here, I will say the only other observable thing I saw in this first build is when you actually go from screen transition to screen transition, you end up with a Link locked in place for a little bit too long, maybe like half a second, but I am sure that is, again, something that can be improved in a new version of this actual build. And don't get me wrong, it is the smallest of quote-unquote complaints, and it really isn't a complaint, more as an observation, but it is one thing I noticed. But honestly, trying to actually pick out any issues with this on day 0, because it has only been out for like 2.5 hours now, is going to be an incredibly difficult thing. And I'm sure this is going to be tested by tens of thousands of people, probably being one of the biggest PC ports of the year, and I'm sure something might be found here and there. And if you do want to bring in saves, you can bring in .gci files from any other system for your Legend of Zelda saves, and go ahead and pop them into the folder just so you know it's under on the FAQ page on the Dusk website as to how to actually import saves. But honestly, I'm not even going to give you a tutorial on how to set this thing up. All you do is double click the executable, point it to your absolutely owned Twilight Princess image, and then you're off to the races. And I really do love the higher frame rate via interpolation. I would say it looks really good here. And just so you know, interpolation is basically quote unquote creating frames. It's not internally making the game run at a higher frame rate. And if you don't realize, some games are tied to logic to their frame rate, which means if you double the frame rate in the game, you can end up with the game actually running a little bit faster. So that is done via interpolation, but I think it's doing a very good job of actually doing that. But you leave a comment down below and you tell me how you feel about the motion cadence and everything else. Because for me personally, this is just straight up killing it, and I absolutely love to see effort put in this hard. Now if we go into the main settings here, right before we select the disk image, you're going to see we have so many different options. You can do this no matter if you selected the disk image or not. You're going to be able to enable VSync, you're going to be able to lock the aspect ratio to 4:3 if you would so like. You're going to be able to adjust the internal running resolution, even the shadow resolution. You have that post-processing for the bloom as well as the broom brightness, and then also unlocking the frame rate. You're going to see that's off by default. I'm going to turn it on, and it says that it may introduce minor visual artifacts or animation glitches, because that again is using interpolation, and you can enable or disable depth of field if you so want. On the input, you can rebind every single controller option. On gameplay, you can play around, including go to mirror mode. Just go through all of these menus and pay attention to each setting, because you can really just basically do whatever you want. There's also going to be some cheats, and my favorite being able to skip all the dialogue in the game for captures when I want to, just by holding down the B button. So again, you're going to be able to articulate and make whatever Twilight Princess PC port experience it is you want, and that again, I love the freedom that these developments give us, because these are options that Nintendo would never put into any of their games. And don't get me wrong, the Twilight Princess port over to Wii U was great, but this is going to be the de facto best way to play until maybe Courage Reborns comes out, and then there will be 2 de facto best ways to play. And again, as I said in a previous video, I'm not going to compare these two things and tell you which one is better. When they're both out, you get to play around with them and decide which one you like more, because effort like this should be rewarded. And honestly, both of these teams, even if Dusk got the port out first, are doing spectacular work, and it really is exciting to know that in 2026, you're able to play Twilight Princess on your PC as a PC port. Although I do know Courage Reborn is planning on a feature for basically skipping over the entire beginning area of the game where you have to round up all the sheep and try to get into the actual game, so I do love that as kind of an option. But the link to the website is down below. Go ahead and grab it, have fun with it, and now you know that the Twilight Princess PC port is 100% done. You can play it today, and you can round up your own sheep anytime you want, which as far as my corgi and healer dogs are concerned, is probably the most fun you can have in this game, because I have 2 herding breed dogs, and trust me, that is not a life you want to live. But short of that, hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below, but I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.